Rumors Are True listeners, if you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook, it is at the Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, feel free, you know what to do. If not, no matter what, I really appreciate you listening. So, again, if you'd like to add me, you know the drill. If you'd like to subscribe, you know it even better. Thank you, guys.
Welcome, it's Jeremy Allen Gould. I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that in fact, the rumors that you have all heard are true. I started this podcast because I freaking love music. I was privileged enough to book amazing artists and bands in the past, and I was lucky enough to stay in touch with many of them to this day. This is a place to hear their stories. Thank you so much for riding along on this journey, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true.
Wake up my good five senses. Try to put on my warm weather glasses. The sky's filled with thick black cover. I feel so brown like thick molasses. When the rain falls down, I can see it now. I feel better when the rain falls. And if the sun and stars don't shine, there is still a light I see. I feel better when the rain falls down on me. Hear the outside time screeching. Try to practice what I've been preaching. That's just the way it is when you open your mouth. You direct your east from moving south. When the rain falls down, I can see it now. I feel better when the rain falls. And if the sun and stars don't shine, there is still a light I see. I feel better when the rain falls down on me. When the rain falls down, I can see it now. I feel better when the rain falls. And if the sun and stars don't shine, there is still a light I see. I feel better when the rain falls down on me. I feel better when the rain falls down on me. I feel better when the rain falls.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome the legend, Chris Colbert. You know Chris from the bands Fluffy, Breakfast with Amy, Duraluxe, and about 1 million records that you and I both love. What an awesome conversation with Chris. So cool and so kind of him to be on this podcast. I'm deeply honored. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Chris Colbert. Chris, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on my podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here.
Awesome, man.
Participant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tell me, what's going on in your life currently? What's going on in your world?
I'm currently sitting in National Freedom Studio in Cottage Grove, Oregon. And once I'm done with this, I am going to start mastering a new Walter Martin record. Nice. My day job is mastering and then mixing, and then maybe once a month or so I record a band.
That's cool.
And it's like my girlfriend says, I work really, really hard to not have a job.
But at least you have found your niche, found your thing to be able to, obviously be creative and do what you were born to do, man. I think that's cool.
Oh, I'm can't believe this is my 40th year
Wow.
music biz, and it's like it's oddly working. It's like,
Yeah.
wow,
Love that, man.
clerical error.
Sweet, man. Well, let's talk about growing up for you. How kind of music kind of came into your life? Maybe some influences, some bands, records that you kind of gravitated to and kind of put you on the trajectory that you went on.
I grew up in Southern California and like the Whittier, Pico, Riviera area, which is like east of Los Angeles. A little bit of a hood. So I grew up, my parents were like children of the 60s. So I listened to a lot of, 45s, my mom's collection.
Mhm.
And the neighborhood I grew up in, being predominantly Hispanic, like what they call the oldies was hugely popular. You hear like, 50s rock and roll and doo-wop blasting out of like lowriders. And that sticks with you. So
Yeah.
I still love like the classics, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, stuff like that is just absolutely foundational. And, that is the form of what we all do who do rock music. Is just like, it's directly, that is the source, and I still love it.
Yeah.
And then, I was in high school in the 80s. I graduated from 84. So that was through peak punk rock in Los Angeles. And I was very fortunate to get to meet and hang out with and go see bands like the Adolescents and Black Flag and DI and X, and a lot of the psychedelic bands like Dream Syndicate and Opal, which became Mazzy Star.
Wow.
I mean, Los Angeles had great radio stations. It was musically, you couldn't be a more fortunate location
Sure.
to have exposure to so much. It's like you could go to like the Thai lounge and get cool cocktails and watch like Thai psychedelic bands.
That's awesome.
And then there's a large Vietnamese culture and their music, which is very influenced by like traditional French pop. Also awesome. And I got to record a little bit of that in my first studio I worked at.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then just, between the going to be able to see bands all the time because everyone played Los Angeles. I had great exposure to a lot of European bands that I think people in the Midwest would have missed out on. I mean, I've seen, Eck and the Bunnymen like 12 times.
Wow.
Hard to do that in Iowa.
No, that's awesome. What? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were cut up.
Pulled into like, buying a guitar and being in bands, and that led to being in a studio, and that just kind of clicked for me. The studio environment seemed really inviting. And also in Los Angeles at the time, backyard party shows like keggers where you charge, $3 at the front gate to play a backyard party. I had a little sound system, speakers on stands that I'd get paid, $75 a night to do sound for these rock shows that were super fun. And that's how I kind of bumbled into being a sound guy.
That's awesome. That's really cool. You kind of mentioned some of the oldies, and was there any like particular records in that time frame that you just I don't know, that you still, I guess, crush today?
I mean, I still like, Sun Studios era Johnny Cash.
Nice.
Can't deny that that's, still great.
Absolutely.
Chuck Berry and Little Richard, I listen to a lot. Bo Diddley, I listen to a lot, and is very, top 3 guitar, player influences.
That's awesome. That's cool. Well, let me talk about, you obviously get into music, you're starting to do some sounds, starting to, work these shows like you were saying. Is that kind of what led you to starting some bands? And I guess, kind of, how did that kind of come to? And was Fluffy and Breakfast with Amy your first bands, or did you have any bands previous to that?
I mean, I played in other people's bands in high school, like, punk rock bands that really, never went past playing backyard parties. And then growing up in the Southern California Calvary Chapel movement, I was exposed to a lot of what became the classic Christian music, Daniel Amos, Phil, Larry Norman. I'd go to those shows. And so, like, and growing up in a very evangelical fundamentalist household, it's just, I met those people who eventually, were either in those bands or took me to see those bands. And then my mom would let us go to like the amusement parks, the amusement park called Knott's Berry Farm.
Yeah, I remember.
Had rides. They would have their Christian music nights, and I would be allowed to go to that and meet a lot of people there. Most of the music was just horrible, but a lot of the people were really nice. And then met other musicians, and then as we hit college age, and we were like, well, we don't want to participate in this religious culture, but we're from it.
Sure.
And we have really, juvenile sense of humor. Let's, start, like Breakfast with Amy was a band that for the first year had no steady lineup. Our songs, we would just go up on stage and make stuff up.
Wow.
Because there's proficient, players, and it was just fun to just like, let's play Last Train to Clarksville 5 times in a row and call it, annoying.
Yeah.
But, play it in a church and get, just have a youth pastor tell us, that we'll never come back. And we're just like, yeah,
cool.
No, yeah. And then when Mike Knott wanted to start Blonde Vinyl, he wanted to do 10 records as his initial like release, his launch.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I could record 10 records in 1 month for $10,000. And I was like, all I heard was $10,000. In 1988 or whatever that was, it was like, that's like a lot of money.
Yes.
And then, so we did that, and then he needed 10 records, and that's how Fluffy came into being a recording project, is because he needed a 10th record. And it's like we could write and record a punk rock record that was 28 minutes long in a weekend.
Amazing.
And then oddly enough, we would get asked to go do shows, which was, once again, people not grasping the situation or listening to the language. And then we'd be up there opening for like the Crucified, but we'd, all be on shrooms or something. And the fact that people had a religious experience from that is pleasantly confusing.
Yes, I would say so too. That's hilarious. It's incredible. I remember discovering it personally. I was kind of getting the whole punk rock world and seeing, in Heaven's Metal magazine or HM, I'd see like, Fluffy or Breakfast with Amy. It was like, oh, this is something I've got to get, kind of that thing. And I loved it. I was young, so I probably went way over my head. But I personally
it's not over anyone's head. It's just so fucking stupid, which was kind of the point. Is just, there was the void of content, but like Fluffy, that was like solid punk rock musically.
Yeah, that's what, exactly.
Just, how vacuous can we make this?
Yeah, absolutely. But I love that. I love that you got to do something like that. And I know, looking back on it, you're saying it's kind of more tongue in cheek and more, of a joke per se. But it's cool that, it obviously influenced a lot of people, a lot of bands and artists that, probably, just were influenced, I guess I should say, by it. So either way, I think that's cool. I think that's awesome.
it was the great thing about Fluffy was the bassist, Jeff Beans, is a foundational like participant in like early like 1977 like Los Angeles punk rock.
That's cool.
You know, he was in a band called the Detours, which became Adolescence. I mean, just a legend in LA punk world, and like the sweetest guy and an amazing bass player. And he, you know, we just bowed down to whatever he, you know, we just did whatever he'd tell us to do. And that's, you know, all those like riffs are just like natural to him, and it was, you know,
That's awesome.
to play.
That's so cool. I love that. Well, let's focus on Duraluxe. You kind of had to change the name, obviously, for Fluffy. So I wanted to kind of talk about how, you know, that transition went, and then we can kind of talk about the records that you put out and who all was in Duraluxe with you, and let's just talk about how that kind of started.
The Alex and Flying Tart gave me money to do a Fluffy record, and I went out to. I was living in Nashville at the time, working out of the choir studio Neverland.
Oh, nice.
And so he gave me a budget, so I went out to LA and we started a Fluffy record with the original lineup, and then we ran out of time, and then we're going to finish it in Nashville, and then somewhere along the way we were informed that there's some British girls who wanted to use the name Fluffy, and they gave us $5,000 to stop using the name, and it was like, okay.
Sweet.
The name Duraluxe I had kicking around, and that's like from a Kurt Vonnegut novel called Bluebeard, where it's I was an art student, like painting and drawing were very important to me, and that, you know, but there's no way to make a living doing that. And that book is about a abstract expressionist artist who did paintings that were worth millions, and he used a brand of paint called Sateen Duraluxe. And he did these giant, massive abstract expressionist pieces that were in galleries, and eventually the paint fell off the canvas. So his greatest triumphs were also his greatest failures.
Nice.
So that checked with me.
Yeah.
That triumph and failure, you know, should always be the same thing. And so that's why I used the name Duraluxe. And then through sessions in Nashville, I met a guitar player named Troy Doherty. I think the first thing we did together was a Hoi Polloi album.
Oh yeah, I saw them.
New Zealand. And he toured with them for a while, but we just hit it off at sessions and and we got hired to do a few things together. So we started a band called Duraluxe, and we actually would tour and do shows. And it was surprising. We could, you know, we did a record, the first record, Duraluxe, I started a studio in Nashville just as a step to like not do Christian music, because by the early to mid 90s, it was just a despicable industry. Just, I mean, especially in Nashville, because it was just, that place is a little twisted. I'm still doing a fair amount of tooth and nail records, you know, like Joe Christmas and Morellas Forest and others, but those two stuck out because they're great bands.
Yeah.
And Luxury, like I was like the I'll do your first record guy.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of first records, which is always kind of fun to do because you're watching a band discover themselves.
Absolutely.
How the process of recording happens, and then if you're doing a first record with a band, it's like it's easy for me to put my sonic fingerprints all over it because I know what I'm doing, and they had the songs, but you know, not the pedal or you know, how to project down the road on how the record is going to sound when it's getting mastered, when you're just starting the basic tracks.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that Dolorosa record that you mentioned. I like it. It's fantastic. Kind of looking back on it, how do you feel about it? And like you said, you were kind of trying to go a different avenue, I guess, in that world. And what was that like for you looking back on that record?
Those are just the songs that just came to me and Troy. And, you know, half of it we did at our own studio, half of it we did in Chicago with a producer named Keith Cleversley, who did the first few Flaming Lips records, like Hit to Death in the Future Head.
So good.
Which is a great record. And, that's back before the Flaming Lips became a terrible festival band. And so we went there because I met him actually when helping Morelos Forest do their second record, which they did with Keith. And I met him and we kind of hit it off, and he invited us up to record some songs. So we did part of it there. And yeah, that was just kind of what came naturally to Troy and I. And then we toured some, had ran the studio in Nashville, and then our studio building was owned by some very shady characters, and then our neighbors became a relaxation center, they called it, but it was a whorehouse that was run and they wanted to take over our space. So they knocked on the door one afternoon and said we had 3 days to get out of our studio space where we were also living. Or they were going to come in there and they were going to find drugs and guns. So we decided that would be a great opportunity to move to Athens, Georgia. Because I was already like participating with through the guys in Joe Christmas, which became Summer Hymns.
Yeah.
And they all those guys, most of them went to University of Georgia. So they were participating in that whole Athens scene, Elephant Six adjacent. So we went there because there was a practical use to have a studio there that was a bit more than a 4-track, but not as expensive as Chase Park Transduction, which was the nice studio there.
Sure.
So we set up shop in Zach Gresham's living room from Summer Hymns, and we did a Summer Hymns record there, Masters of the Hemisphere. I did the Elf Power Winter is Coming album in Zach's living room. The Great Lakes, Marshmallow Coast, and then that was the late 90s. And then in 2000 is when I got the call that Gene Eugene had passed away. And I was back into the green room in Southern California. And so we relocated the Duraluxe operation to Southern California and eventually got around to recording The Suitcase.
Yeah, speaking of The Suitcase, actually, let me back up real quick. You mentioned touring. Who did Duraluxe tour with? Was there anyone in particular, or was it just on your own?
Mostly on our own, because I met a lot of bands through studio work. We would just that created opportunities. This is pre-internet, pre-cell phone, so we had to we were booking phones, we're using a telephone tours and all that. So it was just calling up, I recorded a band called My Little Dog China, which Paved the Rocket, and they're from St. Louis, so that was a St. Louis show. I did a record for Pave the Rocket in Kansas City at the studio run by the guys in Shiner, so that was a Kansas City.
I love Shiner, great band.
Yeah, amazing band, and through Tess Wiley from Sixpence None the Richer, brother with the Mineral.
Yep, love Mineral.
So I got to record them. Somewhere in the 90s, I lived in New York for 2 years doing a lot of TV stuff. 95 and 96. I was in New York. The first CMJ that was the Elephant Six first showcase.
So cool.
Which me and Zachary Gresham were at.
Jeez.
While tripping, of course. Nutrimilk Hotel, Olivia
Great
Tremor,
band.
Which were bands I eventually would do sound for.
That's incredible.
So it's just this, bumbling through the musical universe. Just
love it, man. It's so cool.
Nothing is a direct route.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's cool though that you've got all these memories and stories. Let me ask you on that. You mentioned Mineral. What'd you do for? Which did you work on? Power of Failing, or did you work on?
No, they came to New York for some shows, and the studio I was working at, I did 3 songs for some 7 inches.
Oh, okay.
Totally escaping me the names of the songs. And then I did sound for them for a while. Off and on.
I know Chris. Chris is awesome.
Yeah.
He's great. I had him on my podcast a while back. He's such a sweet guy.
Yeah, they're all great guys.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. I love that, man. Well, let's talk about the Suitcase record real quick. Obviously, you're writing a new record, and you said the first record were just kind of songs that came to you. Was there more on the Suitcase? Was there more of a direction, or were you just kind of going with the flow on this as well?
We had been a band for a while and had toured a fair amount, and we'd had a steady lineup for a few years, so it was more cohesive. Just because we had more time together.
Sure.
And there's a secret theme to that record, because that's when I started working internationally more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Norway for a month and record a Serena Manish record, and
he's so good.
Go to Germany, and I started getting dragged around more and more, and was like becoming the very decentralized, like personally, like just either always jetting off elsewhere to do records, and then also trying to resolve. I spent 3 years trying to resolve the green room situation, have everyone finish their records, get comfortable with their careers without Gene, because he was a centerpiece to a lot of those bands, and that somehow, of course, was Christian rock, which I wasn't stoked about, but I love so many of those people that I just be sure that they were in a comfortable place to go forth. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I love that. I mean, I love that you cared so much about the music and the people that, even if you didn't agree with what it was about, or look, or maybe a difference of opinion, it's awesome that you it shows your character, is what I'm trying to say. The fact that you just, cared so deeply about the music. I think that's the one thing about, watching you from afar. It's like everything I feel like you've done, you put your best step forward, and it's always just been something that memorable.
Thanks. Yeah. It was anything once you agree to like the terms, you settle on the dollar amount. It doesn't matter what that is. So from that point forward, it's like, you put your best effort in, whether, and you don't have to care about the music to care about the project.
Sure.
It's like I loved going to Japan for the first few times and just watching an entire civilization that their religion is doing things well. And Americans don't do that. So,
it's true. We don't.
We are gods of half-assery.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. And that's valid, but just executing well, which is like, as a guitar player, I'm not a natural shredder. Like, I'm friends with like Jeff Schroeder and Andy Prickett, and it's just like, I will never touch their skill set.
Sure.
Jeff Schroeder is like one of the world's best guitar players.
It's incredible.
And it's like, but I can learn songs to the point where if I execute them well, it's satisfying, mentally, spiritually, musically, and then people think you're a good guitar player. And so, yeah, you just try and execute well in everything you do, and that is its own reward.
Absolutely.
And that's also a challenge sometimes, especially when you're like on week 5 of a fucking John Gibson record. Okay. Our Stonehill Children's record, where it's just like,
oh my,
this is a special level of hell, but I will do my best to
that's hysterical,
find a way to make it good.
I liked one John Gibson song, and I can't tell you what it's called. I cannot. It was on some sampler. I'm sure you heard them all.
There's difficult people in every branch of the music industry.
I believe it.
But the Christian music industry like thrives on difficult people because they're insular, built-in audience. and you add this like bullshit spirituality of like, God speaks through me because I do this music. No, but oh God, it's like the arrogance level is like, you think it wouldn't be so overwhelming in the Christian subculture, but you know, look at pastors and worship leaders. It's like,
Yeah. They're rock stars, man.
it's a fucking point entirely.
Yeah.
And, you know, you wake up every day and lie, but that's cool, man.
Whatever floats your boat.
Vaya con Dios, motherfucker.
So the Suitcase comes out. How long after the Suitcase? Do you tour that at all? And
No, because this is like, don't ever be, I had to stop being in bands because I
just too busy.
am the worst band member in the world. I'm a fucking nightmare. I guarantee you, it's like, I want things my way. I'm going to produce the record because I'm not paying anybody to do that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it myself. It's going to sound the way I want it to sound. The mixes are going to be how I want them to mix. I'm not going to show up to rehearsal. And then it's just like, I'm going to like be super flaky because I'll make more money doing sound on someone else's tour than I will like playing in front of 200 people. And
you're right.
It's like, do I want to be like, go on tour with the Walkmen and Kings of Leon and make
way better money
a month again?
Yeah.
Or like maybe afford to get to the point on a Duraluxe tour where we can go into Taco Bell and like, all right, lads, you can get 2 items on the 99-cent menu today.
You're a wise man. You're a wise man.
So yeah, by the time we got to the Suitcase, Troy and Megan, who are band members, and a couple, they hated it there. They just weren't feeling Long Beach. Our drummer like embraced it to the point where he became Los Angeles, and that was great. And he wanted to like pursue his writing career, which is the right choice.
Yeah.
And in 2003, it's like the green room done, sold, case closed. Everyone, Andy Prickett became the engineer for everybody, and he was fantastic. I wish he was still.
He's amazing.
And then I was touring with bands I'd helped record were doing great things, like the band Esther Drang. I did their first record at the Green Room.
Right.
And everyone in that band was like a great musician. And the drummer, he got hired by Sufjan Stevens, and that's how I got sucked into Sufjan tour world for a while, for Michigan, Illinois, and the BQE projects.
Wow.
Where it turned into like Sufjan 17-piece band, a full orchestra, dancer, and me at the front of house just thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? This is too much. This has nothing to do with punk rock.
Yeah.
But it was epic. And then like after like the Illinois / BQE like orchestral era, once we finished those tours, I just told Sufjan, I'm like, I thank you so much for all this experience, but can I please be done with you?
Wow.
He's just like, bro, like the next thing I do is going to be like not this and not, and then he did Age of Ads, and I had nothing with
that's the tour I saw him on.
Yeah. And then also I was splitting my time because somewhere along the way I was in a van with Esther Drang doing shows with Pedro the Lion, who did a show with a band called Early Mart, who needed a sound guy for a tour because they're opening up for this band I liked because of a Saturn commercial called The Walkmen.
Oh yeah, great band.
And then showed up for the first day of the Walkman tour, and they, on the way to the first show, they fired their sound guy. They just set him out of the van. Just, you got to get out of the van. We this isn't going to work. And so I started mixing them, and that lasted for 10 years.
I think I saw them with Fleet Foxes.
Yeah, I did.
And yeah, in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I was at. You were probably in the same place, and I would have if I had known it. I said, hey.
Yeah, it was the Walkman. I was their sound guy. The 90. Other than I'd skip out every now and again because Sufjan paid better. Yeah, I mixed every Walkman show, like
Amazing.
except for maybe 5% of them because I was busy with Suf.
Man.
And then that's like, and then Troy took Duraluxe back to Nashville and did stuff, and I just got sucked into a vortex of and also at the Green Room in 2000 is where I met Richard Swift.
Yes.
And I met him at Gene Eugene's funeral, and then there are some sessions booked that I picked up because finish everyone's record, and then I found myself in a room with Richard Swift, Frank Lanz, and Eli Thompson.
Man,
it was like we should do this from now on and forever.
Sweet.
And so I the first Richard Swift record was pretty much just Richard, Frank Lanz, and myself, and
amazing.
That was also very much like defining because I'm in the studio right now that Swift and I founded
Beautiful.
18 years ago.
That's so cool, man.
But I worked on every one of the Richard Swift records except for The Novelist. He did that by himself.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
It's cute to me when people call and they want they call because of the studio, or they maybe read credits. I don't know. It's confusing if people read credits and they're like, do you know you work at the studio. Do you know how to, like, if you're to mix my record, can you get that Richard Swift sound? And it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I can.
And 3 people on the planet, 4, that can do the Richard Swift sound because it was really Frank Lanz, Eli Thompson, Richard Swift, and myself that we did that.
It's amazing.
It kind of became a semi-genre, which
so cool, dude.
It's adorable.
That's awesome, man. How do you feel about having kind of made your mark in that world? Just in terms of what you just said, that sound.
It's the way I like records to sound. I mean, there's like, if you listen to like the Starflyer record, Leave Here Stranger, which I mixed.
Great record.
Which there is no stereo version. That's one of those records I will argue about online when people say, oh, there's these mystery stereo mixes out there. Look, assholes, there's not. They don't exist. Stop lying. I
love that.
I did that.
It's incredible.
Totally mono.
That record's amazing.
Are like the Lassie Foundation records.
So good.
To me, it's just like there's definitely a connection between that sound and the Richard Swift sound. The big reverb.
Absolutely.
That same space echo tape delay is 8 feet away from me. That's on all of those.
That's so cool. Well, let me ask you this real quick. I want to kind of get into some of your favorite records you've worked on, but I wanted to kind of talk briefly about your time in the supergroup Kush. Loved everything they ever put out. Just curious your thoughts on that time when you were kind of in the band and out of the band and working with the band.
Oh, in or out of the band, like after Gene passed, I just all of a sudden was mixing the one that Michael Knott sang on.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is great. And then the EPs, I get confused, to be honest. I'm utterly lacking in nostalgia in a lot of ways. It used to be like in the 1800s, nostalgia was considered a disorder.
I have a disorder then.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit lacking that. Me and Swift were also participants in Charity Impressa.
Yes.
And to be honest, I don't know the difference. I was on. I couldn't tell one from the other at the time because I was doing both of them when we could, as we could. Because anytime I could be in a room with like Eric Campuzano, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, he's great.
But what was Kush and what was Charity Impressa, I don't fucking know.
I love that.
You know,
I mean,
it's like, and Charity Impressa shows were just like some of my favorite things because it's like we're playing poker on stage, you know, or Wayne and someone's playing cards on stage while I'm like lying on the floor with a Casio SK1 and Swift has a Chaos pad and that's the show and people are mad. It's like, oh, that takes me right back to like Buffy taking shrooms and opening for the Crucified.
you like to poke the bear, it sounds like, which is okay.
It's like there's a secret art school me that didn't really get developed enough of performance art. So yeah.
Well, I think that's what makes you special. I think you're the type. I mean, there's a reason that you are in the position, and you not only the talent, but you just have the moxie and the the ability to be to poke the bear when you want to poke the bear. I think that's cool.
What is the difference between arrogance and confidence?
I've never been asked that, but probably. Yeah, I mean, I'm a confident guy, so I get it. I don't feel like I'm arrogant.
Arrogant. I mean,
who's to say?
I guess I checked myself with that question, and having dealt with a lot of really big rock stars,
sure,
that's I want to ask all of them that question. Like, what's the difference between arrogance and confidence?
It's a very tough question, but you're right though. I mean, I guess there's just that line, the metaphoric line. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I definitely get what you're saying for sure.
But answer the question.
I think the difference, personally, for me, is when I say something confidently and I know what I know, or I feel like I know what I know, and I don't have to doubt it. I think arrogance, there's some doubt there, is my guess.
So confidence is a foundation in your knowledge, and arrogance is projecting things you might know.
There's got to be a portion of that. That's true, but I mean, maybe there is. I mean, there's people that are good at what they do and they're arrogant. I mean, that's such a tough question. You're putting me on the spot, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're arrogant.
Why don't I get to ask the questions?
Who's to say, Chris? Who's to say? Well, let me ask you this. I want to kind of go. I know you kind of mentioned some of the records and the green room and all that. I just want to know some of your favorite records that you've kind of worked on in the past. And I don't want, if people listen to this that might have played on some records, I don't want them to, you think you're, singling, particular ones up. I'm just curious, some of the ones that you are just maybe most proud of, or more so most just, jog that memory that you like to look back on.
Like take the time to pull out of the sleeves and put on the turntable.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Pacifico by the Lassie Foundation.
Great record.
Every now and again, I look at like, and this is like being genre specific to Christian alt rock. I in my mind, which is once again arrogance, I look at the Luxury, Amazing and Thank You.
Great record.
Joe Christmas, Upstairs, the first one.
Upstairs Overlooking.
Yeah, and the first Morellas Forest. In my mind, those are a closed set that I have great affinity for. And those bands are only connected just through playing the same shows occasionally, other than the fact that me and Steve Hindalong made those records. But those three records to me are a set and I really do like those.
Yes.
I
That's
know the
great.
band have done better. They've written better songs down the road. They all developed, and they're all first records for all three of those bands. But I don't know. In my mind, that those three are a concise statement, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I love those Swift records. You know,
Great records.
an odd one, which I don't think anyone heard, was "Pave the Rocket." They did one record that I actually produced and paid for, and they got the old indie label fuckaroo.
Mm.
It's a great record, post-hardcore kind of thing.
What's it called? I want to listen to it because I didn't know about it.
It's the only one they made.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll see if it's up.
Yeah, I can't.
Is it Taken In?
What's
Taken
that?
In? Taken
Yes.
In? Okay.
Yeah. That's a solid
Cool.
record.
All right, I'll listen to that.
The bits and bobs I did with the Walkman here and there, kind of fun.
That's awesome. What was there any, I don't want you to name ones that you hated, but was there some that you mentioned one earlier in particular. Were there some that, that you just have, just think about and you're like, man, why was I here? Or why, kind of maybe just your thoughts on that.
I was pretty fortunate to not really ever have to do too much stuff I didn't like. Other than like a few things where like I get called in to do stuff at the green room when Gene would have he would book himself in 3 different studios and then have me and, Andy Prickett, like, and the other, he would, would be circling around, like factory work.
Sure.
And then, a mutual, like, go fuck yourself from a band called Christafari. Christian
reggae,
but they were just the worst human beings.
Wow.
And that's just a genre that shouldn't be. You can't. Christian reggae. It's the cultural appropriation was
rampant.
And I've done a few like mega church pastors' kids, like vanity records that people I can't even remember, that were just like, oh, you suck, but you're hiring all these great people because your daddy takes 10% of old people's income, and you came here in an $80,000 car that is just from the mega church. Like,
yeah,
go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like, how can you do that?
Yeah.
Thanks for the money.
Thanks for playing.
I've been fired from some PKs, because I just snap and I just, oh, sorry, we're late. We had to go to the Armani store and buy this, and I'm just like,
jeez,
I got to be done here.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, for sure.
Yeah, I have some self-editing issues.
I love that. You mentioned the green room a lot. Maybe some a thought or two, kind of looking back on that. Just overall, I know it's a legendary place for a lot of the artists and a lot of fans who've listened to a lot of the records. Just kind of your thoughts on that time at the green room.
It was fantastic. The studio itself was just like, it was called Studio B before it was the green room, because it was just, in the olden times in Los Angeles, Orange County, studio hierarchy, you had your fancy studios, your Sunset Sound, Capitol, your A rooms that were really expensive, and you go there and you do your big tracking with drums or your orchestra, or studios that would be thousands of dollars a day. But then all over Southern California would be what they called overdub room, B rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And the green room was built out for, I think, Maranatha music in the 70s to be a beat room. So the gear was just as bare bones as you could possibly get. And then when Gene Eugene and his business partner, Ana Cardenas, bought it somehow, the gear didn't change. It was still just as bare bones, like, not at the time, like one of the cheaper mixing consoles you can get, but it did sound good. The cheapest tape machine you can get, minimal gear. But, with minimal gear, if you apply great talent, you get great
Sure. I love that, though. That's amazing. That's cool.
Gene was also like a great hustler. And his, personality wise, he just charmed everybody to like, and plus he was involved with that label he had with Ojo Taylor. He had a lot of hustles going on. And so it would be super fun. It's like he would call me from wherever I was at, New York, Nashville, Athens, to come in for a week or two and help him get caught up on recording whatever,
Yeah.
Bouncing between 3 different rooms, but always winding up to the green room and, hanging out with him at night. And then the way Anna had the studio laid out in the lounges, which were just, she was a master or mistress of vibe, just cool and very influential on why National Freedom is like very vibey. Cool. It instills confidence and comfort in the performers to have not a sterile environment. Like the big fancy rooms, which are bright, clean, shiny, sterile, that's intimidating for everybody.
Sure.
But if you're in someone's living room,
comfort.
Yeah, comfort. And then also keep it cheap. I sell my time. I try to make my time affordable. And that's why I'm in Cottage Grove, Oregon, is because it's so low overhead. I can be very generous with my time and charge less because I don't have to pay. Like the overhead I would pay in Los Angeles for this space would be like $10,000 a month.
Crazy.
And it is definitely not that here. I'm in a barn in someone's backyard. Not my backyard, someone's backyard.
Yeah, that's cool.
Former Swift residents.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you, I know you kind of mentioned some of the bands that you've went out with, front of house wise or mixing and whatnot. And you mentioned the Walkmen, Leon Bridges, Sufjan, Pedro. You also worked with Mazzy Star. What are some other artists that you've kind of worked with? I've just been curious.
The Walkman was 10 years, pretty much. And then Sufjan and Mazzy Star thing was for their reunion original lineup tour in 2013.
And you lived next to her, right?
What's that?
And you lived like a mile from her, right?
Yeah, I grew up in East LA like she did. As it turns out, we grew up 1 mile apart, where she's 1 month older than me.
Crazy.
And her cousins and some of my cousins' boyfriends actually knew each other. So it was like
small world.
And she has some diva-esque attributes that I could just be like, look, Chica, no, never. It's like, that don't work with me. And that helped. We were just, I'm actually a fairly shy person. She's an extremely shy person. But we got along great. The rest of the band was a trip.
Yeah.
But my God, what a talent. She never made. She
never what?
A flawless musician.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Just like that flat, no vibrato voice, that tambourine. The band was so scared and so timid. We'd be in the Warfield Theater, 4,000 people or whatever. And they're so timid and it's so quiet and so dark that in the middle of songs, sometimes there'd be no one playing. It'd just be utter silence. And the tension was great. But it'd just be so timid and so quiet. And it would just devolve from fear into nothingness. And then she'd swing that tambourine on her hip. And it's just like, you know, everyone would like, then the song would rediscover itself.
Wow.
That magic.
That sounds amazing.
But she is difficult. And then her management asked me if I wanted to do like her solo tours, and I was absolutely not.
What's some of the other bands? You said obviously Walkman 10 years, and you did it with Leon Bridges for a little bit, correct?
I was with Leon Bridges for his first 5 years. In between the Walkman and Leon, it was Mazzy Star, and then I did some time with Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that band,
which was fun. I know I'm forgetting stuff. I mean, a couple.
Starflyer.
I was just starting to pick up shows with Elliott Smith.
Wow.
That didn't work out at all. She and Him, Matt Ward, M. Ward.
Wow.
So, like, yeah. Rolling with Zoe Deschanel for a minute was hilarious. That woman is insanely funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's really fun. But then, like, yeah, the Walkman's management company, after the Walkman went on hiatus, and I was skipping about and mostly like starting to do more studio stuff. Because in between all these tours, like I was, helping Swift with records.
Yeah.
And maintaining the studio, doing all the tech work, doing, I discovered mastering fit in well with in between tours, because mastering only takes a couple days, not weeks, like
sure
record. And then the Walkman's management is like, we have a project we'd like you to do. We're going to send you 2 singles, and if you like it, call me back. Here's a Dropbox link. And it was the first 2. It was Leon Bridges, Coming Home, and Lisa Sawyer. And so I listened to those 2 songs. So exactly 7 minutes later, I called him back, and I'm just like,
oh yes.
Yeah. Like, well, we don't think he'll be in a van for very long. And so we did like a week of shows before he went to South by Southwest. And that's when I learned you can win South by Southwest.
That's amazing.
You can actually win it. You can win an award. We all got like $1,500 each for winning South by Southwest. And that year it was Leon for Best New American Artist and Courtney Barnett for Best International Artist.
Wow.
And it was just such a calamity wherever we went, because we did like 9 shows in 4 days or something silly like that. And we had expectations that people would want to pay attention, but we didn't think, 5,000 people would show up to a event of 200. So like I had the Austin Fire Marshal's phone number in my phone for the week. I had to tell him where we're going to be, so he can like have the fire department and the police there to mitigate the debacle we're creating.
Holy cow.
And then, yeah, it just blew up. It was amazing. I went around the world with that guy like so many times, so fast in 5 years. And then the last summer I was with him, we did like 37 festivals in one summer.
Holy crap.
And like 3 or 4 weeks in South America with Harry Styles.
Oh my gosh.
And so we're in arena-sized rooms where there's like 50, 60, 70,000 people.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm, the dude from Fluffy at the front of the house. And I'm, this is once again, this is a clerical error. A grown-up needs to show up and like take over, because this is not comfortable.
Do you ever get nervous when you're doing that? I mean, I know you've probably done it a million times.
Panic attack when you have no sound check. No line check. There's 100,000 people waiting for Leon Bridges to walk out on stage, and you do not know what's going to come out of those speakers. No idea. It's called throw and go. You load in your file. You hope the little lights on the meters are twinkling so you know all your microphones are working. all you really care about is whether the kick drum and the lead vocal mic work, but you can't check them because it's a festival and there's other shit going on.
Absolutely.
And, you know, during the day, you have to like set up and, you know, stops and starts while other bands set up, and it's chaotic and you're outside all day. And I'm one of those people. I'm an indoor cat. Outside sucks.
Yeah.
And then there's just like, I do what I call the death march out to the front of house in the middle of a field where there's like 100,000 people or whatever. And then there's that wait of just like that last 5 minutes where you can do nothing but wait, and it goes on forever. And like, you can smoke a lot of fucking cigarettes in 5 minutes.
I believe it.
Back when I used to smoke, and God, I missed smoking when I didn't, because it's just that full-on panic attack of like, what is going to happen? Because when things don't go well, it's like, it's the sound guy's fault. When it goes great, no one notices you.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of a brutal life. And then, you know, you're bus, you know, sleeping in a box. But yeah, that is just, if you want PTSD, go on tour with like a band that you know, does a lot of festivals.
Yeah, that sounds like it. That sounds like a nightmare.
I mean, it's easier with the Walkman because they didn't care. It's like things can just run off the rails, and as long as they get the check, they were golden.
Yeah.
You know, they're friends with failure. You know, not friends, but they're familiar with failure technically, because they don't want to sound check. They don't want to set up. You know, they just want the check. So that was easy. That was fine. That's a policy that I could live with.
Yeah.
Sufjan didn't do festivals because there's no way he could. And wise to always pass, because there's just impossible. But yeah, with Leon, it was like the pressure was on. And after like the hairstyles, and like it was going to be arenas, and I'd like dislocated my knee so many times on tour, I decided it was time to stop and do something about that. And I got really tired of saying no to studio work.
Yeah.
I got passed on mastering and mixing records because I was gone all the time, and I was in my 50s. So the last show of his 2018 summer tour was at Red Rocks.
Wow.
And I'm just like,
that's the one.
I can be done here. And it was recorded and filmed like for Sony, and I got to mix that. So that was like, not only did I get to mix my last show for Leon, my last show, period, was at Red Rocks. It was also like well documented, which is kind of fun.
That's amazing. I love hearing that, man. These stories are so cool, dude. And it just, man, what a blessing to have all these opportunities. That's so cool.
Just bumbling. I am just a bumbling old man. I've been a bumbling old man my entire life, and it's just all this. It takes a willingness to step off a cliff. It's like, especially here in a small town, I meet musicians who are competent songwriters who are just like, and when they're drunk, they're like, it's not fair. You and Richard get to go do all this stuff, and I'm here with my wife and kids. And I'm just like, you didn't step off a fucking cliff, moron.
Yeah.
You want to succeed in music, it's just like, get in a van and make no money for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's all risk, and it's like, and shit eating, but it's also equal parts beauty and horror. If you take the big risk and you eat a lot of shit, you get to do amazing things.
Yeah.
You know,
it's very true.
I was a weird little dude from like Pico Rivera. It's like, why am I in Istanbul mixing the Walkman right now? You know,
amazing, man. Yeah, I love that, dude. I love that.
Like in a Suburban going 100 miles an hour through Jericho. You know,
it's crazy. That's so cool, dude. Well, let's talk about National Freedom Studio. I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, and that you and Richard Swift put that together. And I know you said you just worked on a record recently. How's the studio going? You obviously sound like you're staying pretty busy, and I kind of, just maybe mention that. And what's the website? I'm just curious if people want to kind of look into it.
National Freedom or National Freedom Studio is the Instagram or Christopher Colbert Instagram is like how people usually find me. The website, it exists. I'm not the one who checks it. My associate does, but stuff gets to me. Yeah, the studio I cannot believe how well it's going.
It's amazing.
Yeah, most of the time it's mastering. And thank God for low overhead, because during the pandemic, when no one could tour or go to studios, all the old material that was unreleased that people didn't like, they learned to love it and needed it mastered for the pandemic. And so I was doing a lot of, pay me later stuff, discount stuff, free stuff, whatever it took to get people through.
Sure.
But yeah, mastering's like the day job part of it, and then mixing. And then, but yeah, it's a full functioning recording studio. We have bands that come in like enough to like justify the microphone collection.
Awesome.
Yeah, and plus it's like I'm very lucky. The Swift family wanted out of the studio business. They didn't want ownership. And the person who bought the property had the means to do so, because I didn't. But I get to I just rent the space, and I'm just delighted that it's just enough people love the space and the vibe is still here, and the insiders know who did what.
Yeah.
On the records, the general public, the brand was Richard Swift. We agreed on that. That made sense. It's like, it's easier to sell one thing, Richard Swift. Plus he wrote those songs, and he co-wrote all those songs with like Shins and Black Keys and Pretenders that he worked really hard for those gold records,
Yeah.
And I worked really hard creating the environment for that to take place. And then he and I collaborated on those records, in some capacity. The ones I didn't record, Eli Thompson recorded the ones,
Sure.
That their little core Richard Swift cult. And it went great for a long time until it didn't. But still being able to do it now in the same space with the same vibe, upgraded gear, and it's a lot, more tidy now. No, I'm just stoked that it still functions, and, bring it on, people. It's like, I haven't forgotten how to record.
I love that, man. I love that, man. The fact that you still get to do, like I've mentioned earlier, still get to do what you love.
Oh my God. I'm working with people in their 20s.
That's amazing.
I get older, but they stay the same,
That's so cool.
It's
dude.
like, it's amazing to me that kids in their 20s, come to me to finish their records. I think that'll stave off dementia for a little while longer, kind of somehow managing to have a tiny little sliver of cultural relevance.
Yeah.
How fortunate.
That's so cool, dude. Chris, this has been so cool, man. I really appreciate you coming on and telling me these amazing stories, and just just behind the curtain a little. Been an awesome conversation, and I'm just really honored that you'd come on and talk to me. And I really appreciate you being so willing and kind.
So is this a therapy session that we're
Yes, I'm trying to get over being arrogant and more confident.
Good.
Awesome, man. Well, I will tell you.
That's also valid.
Yeah. Could be. Awesome, dude. Well, hopefully we'll get to meet in person sometime. That would be incredible. I would love to do that.
We're right on I-5. Stop by anytime.
All right, brother. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you to the listener for tuning in again and again. I really appreciate it. It's been amazing, the support. So I really deeply appreciate you guys listening, liking, subscribing, sending, sharing, clicking, whatever you want to call it. Thank you so much. They get it, Chris Colbert. So honored to have you on. Amazing conversations. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and hope to hang out sometime in the future. So thank you again, Chris. Got some incredible artists on the horizon, and guys, nostalgia is still a hell of a drug.